What's up, great people, Rich Vibes? You're listening to the Rich Girl Podcast, the biggest bank that offers you relief, guidance, and transformation for the soul. I'm your host and rich friend, Ty, and before we get into it, the quote of the day is, "A disruptor finds opportunity and profit from his misfortunes." And on today's episode, our rich discussion is, y'all, it's so good. Disrupt the interruption. And I'm not going to delay us. I'm going to jump right into it. But first, I would like to thank every last one of you who has connected with me. Connected with me on socials, subscribing to my channel, like all the things. This is just the beginning for us. It's just the beginning, and I'm so excited for us to be able to share, develop a growing, expanding, flourishing community, a rich community. And I'm talking about both in money, mindset, and within our soul, all the things, right? I'm just so appreciative. I'm appreciative for your time, your efforts, like all the things. You just don't know. But I'm going to get into our episode for today, which is disrupt the interruption. And so something that grinds my gears is when I'm driving. I'm flowing with the traffic, or if I'm going above the speed limit, y'all be quiet, don't say nothing on that. And then another driver gets in front of me going the speed limit. It is nothing more that grinds my gears other than when somebody gets in front of me and I am just flowing in my own lane, and another person gets in front of me and they're going the speed limit. And then, not to mention, if they get over without a blinker, oh my gosh, that grinds my gears even further. And don't let me be in the middle of a car concert, that is. Like, music off, I'm officially in the mood because you decided to interrupt my flow, right? And when I was thinking about that, and you can tell it recently just happened, which is why I brought it up, right? But I said, after I reflected a little bit, I said, such as life situations and circumstances, right? Life for you, life for me, it may not be perfect, right? It may not be to the degree or to the level in which we dream of at this moment, but we have steady flow, we have good energy, we have positivity, right? We may have some financial relief, right? Where at one point we was in debt or it wasn't enough, but now we're in a place where we have some financial relief, headed towards financial freedom, right? We have love, we have happiness, and we have stability of the mind, right? Everybody is seeking peace on the outside, but what we got to understand is that peace comes from the inside, right? We may have relationships that's flourishing. You may feel like you're making steady progress and have consistent gains, right? You're not where you desire to be. I may not be where I'm desiring to be at this moment, but there's evidence that you have motion and that you have momentum. Right? And then the next thing we know, completely unannounced and completely unprepared for, are life situations and circumstances that interrupt, disrupt, impose on the activity we have working in our lives, right? So I asked myself, I was like, Tyra, what do you do? So I'm asking you the same question. What do you do when your life is interrupted, when there's a disruption, or certain life circumstances and situations imposed on your life? Do you stop and do absolutely nothing? Do you complain? Do you whine? Do you seek sympathy? Do you spiral out of control? Like, what do you do when you are disrupted, when your life experiences an interruption, right? And what I have learned is that interruptions are a part of our daily living, right? You can do so much to prepare yourself, to plan for unforeseen circumstances, but as much as you plan, they're still going to come from different areas, different arenas, different spots in your life, right? That you have to acknowledge. And so life interruptions are moments in life, and you will hear me say moments, right, a lot, because life interruptions are just that. They are moments in life when things just don't go the way that we plan. They can either support your building or dismantle your building. So all that you work towards, it can either support your continuation of progress or it can dismantle all of your building depending on how you approach the situation, right? You either discover and learn the lessons or you become resentful and close off, shut out all that God has working for you. And I want to put this disclaimer out there, right? Because we have a tendency to believe that God is controlling all the good and the bad situations in our lives. Let me tell you this, not all bad or evil things that occur in your life is God's fault. As I have stated several times across all my social media platforms, you have an op out here in the world, right? And his name is the devil. And his primary goal in your life is to steal, kill, and destroy. But what you got to understand is that the devil, and I don't mean to get too spiritual, but it's in me. So it got to come out of me, right? It's like fire. I've been through a lot of situations where I have questioned God and I have asked God questions, but I also had to settle myself down and ask myself, where did I allow the enemy, where did I allow the devil to come into my life? Like, where did I give him permission, or where did he just invade my life without permission? So whether he came with or without permission, it's still our obligation to figure out what is going on, right? What is going on in our present circumstances in the natural, but also figure out the spiritual side of things, right? But what you got to understand is that the devil, principalities and forces of darkness, demons and wickedness, etc., they anticipate you daily. Every day that you wake up, they stand at attention just as heaven does, and they anticipate what you're going to say, what you're going to do, all the things every single day, but you don't even realize it, right? They anticipate, as I said, they anticipate your speaking improperly, your negative speaking, how you're going to speak full of doubt. They anticipate your acting out irrationally when life circumstances come, right? They anticipate you acting irresponsibly. They anticipate your disobedience. They anticipate your disorientation. Like, how unbalanced do you get when your life is seemingly interrupted and you think that I'm down for the count, I'm being defeated and everything, your whole world is crumbling. And it can be the smallest of the situation or the biggest of the situation, depending on how you identify it, right? But they anticipate everything that you will do to oppose God, right? To oppose the plan that God has for you in an attempt to steal, kill, and destroy you. Hell is a real place. I gotta tell y'all that. Hell is a real place. And the evil spiritual forces there, they act on how you respond to situations and circumstances in your life every single day, just as God does, just as the angels of heaven do. But what you got to understand, in addition to the fact that there is an opt out here, and his name is the devil, that as his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy you, steal, kill, and destroy the plan that God has for you, he does it in increments. And we just let him do it. He does it little by little. It's like a slow walk, like little by little. They steal your peace, your joy, your happiness, your right thinking. Little by little, they kill your soul, your heart, your dreams, your vision. They kill your hunger, right? And little by little, they destroy your mindset, your character, your family, your finances, your influence, your integrity, etc. And then one day, you'll look at your life, right? You'll look at yourself and you'll ask God, how did I get here? And why have you left me? But what I have stopped to reflect and ask myself, if I start to, it's okay for you to ask questions, but I don't think that it's a fine line when you start to question God. Because when things are going good in your life, it's like, whoa, my God, like, thank you, God, thank you, Jesus, like, everything is going good. And we all have that famous line, oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. But are you blessed and highly favored when you have life interruptions, right? Are you still living under that same blessing, the same mantle, the same glory of I'm blessed and I'm highly favored, just as you are when life is going good? Is it consistent when life isn't necessarily going the way that you want it to go? And so the right question should be, do we leave him when things are going astray in our lives? Are we clinging to him in every single situation, no matter how it looks? That's the right question. You got to know that under all circumstances, you're going to win. The fight is already fixed in your favor. But do you have a winner's mentality, right? It's a win-win. Anytime that situations, life circumstances come about in your life, it's always a win-win. You may feel the impact when it initially happens, right? But at some point in the midst of your discovery that, oh, I'm experiencing a life interruption, you got to decide when you're going to turn on the winner's mindset. Even though you want to lean towards sympathy, you want to complain, you want to quit because it get hard, you still got to turn on the winner's mentality and say, you know what? I'm going to win under any and all circumstances. You got to ask yourself, do I believe that God is with me? Do you believe that God allows unfavorable things to occur in your life? Because if someone was to ask me, hey Ty, do you believe that God allows certain unfavorable things to occur in your life? My answer would be absolutely, with a however. And that's a big however, because I like to believe that God's interruptions are called inconveniences in our lives, right? He intervenes for a purpose, for a reason, right? Intervention, right? That's what I meant to say. God intervenes. So God's form of an interruption is an intervention. He intervenes in our lives. He intervenes to display his glory. He intervenes to fulfill his purpose, his plan, and his promises in our lives, right? And are the interventions, what we think the inconveniences, are God's interventions and inconvenience at times? I would say yes. Nonetheless, understanding and accepting the truth that God is concerned about you, he's concerned about me, he cares for you, and he cares for me. Therefore, he will intervene, he will interrupt at any moment he sees fit in order to correct us, to discipline us, to bless us, and to save us from calamity, to save us from destruction. Every interruption is not a distraction, but an opportunity for redirection. So if it is that God sees that you are making decisions and you're not consulting him, would you not want him to intervene in your life? And yes, it can be so inconveniencing to you, to your family, and whomever else or whatever other area of your life is in, but it can be an inconvenience. But you gotta stop at some point and be like, okay, well, what part am I playing in this? What decisions am I making? Who am I talking to? Who's in my circle? Who's in my space that can be influencing you and leading you, guiding you with one, misinformed counsel, unsound, unwise counsel, and could be leading you into an unnecessary pitfall. And then you get into that unnecessary pitfall and you still want to blame God. But again, from a human level, from a natural perspective, you decided to make the decisions that you decided to make, right? And you got to be able to, just like this whole thing, this whole trend that's going on about standing on business, if you won't believe God, that's called standing on business. Whatever it looks like, you need to stand on business. If it doesn't look like it's favorable, you need to stand on business. Because, and in the end, if you keep standing on the fact that, okay, God, I know you said you'll never leave me or forsake me. You'll never relax your hold on me, leave me helpless, hopeless, or without support. But I know you won't do it. You need to stand on that. That's a promise. So you need to stand on business. If you know that God said, listen, I'm not a man that I should lie, nor the son of man that I should repent. But if I said it, I'm going to do it. You got to stand on business knowing that he going to fulfill what he said. Listen, it's a promise to you. Either you going to take it or not. It's your inheritance. Are you going to take it or not? He says you're the head and not the tail, above only and never beneath. But you think that you are second rate? You think that his purpose, his design, his craftiness when it comes to your life, you think he made a mistake because you wasn't born with a silver spoon. Standing on business mean, and I'm not saying business because y'all know what I'm talking about. Standing on business mean I'm going to believe the word whether it looks like it's working out in my favor or not. God's interventions in our lives is to get our attention. So when he intervenes, ask yourself, are you standing at attention? Right? And this makes me remember of a story, right? So I'm going to share a story with y'all. So I remember like almost 3 years ago. No, not almost 3 years ago. It was 3 years after I graduated. Not 3 years. Wait a minute. Let me see. Get your math together. Let my math, right? But I remember, okay, I got it. I remember almost 3 years after graduating undergrad school, right? I was moving into my first apartment. And so this was huge for me. It was a huge win after being temporarily without a home, right? When I graduated undergrad, it was different. It was a different situation for me, right? So 3 years after or almost 3 years after graduating undergrad and getting my first apartment on my own, that was a huge win, right? I didn't live the American dream like many people told me after graduation. So I didn't obtain the $70K salary. I wasn't living in this luxury home or this luxury apartment home. I didn't have a car, right? I didn't have a hefty savings. I didn't have no ends, right? I didn't even have not one job to go to. But let me tell you something, in the middle of that life interruption, when I tell y'all God provided, and I don't even know how, and I can't even figure it out, God provided to make sure that I didn't lack in any area, right? So in the midst of me having no ends, right? Like I couldn't even make ends meet, if that makes sense, because I didn't have any employment, any housing, any transportation. I didn't have savings. I didn't have any of it because I was not prepared for the life that I walked into after undergrad, right? I expected to walk into this American dream that my counselor sold me and that other people that I looked up to, or people that were adults that were in my family or whatever, that told me that life was going to look a certain type of way after undergrad. It just simply was not true. It was so hard for me. It was so hard. So every day I would cry and then I would pray, right? I would get mad and then I would question God. I would read and confess scriptures and affirmations and create vision boards, but then at the same time I would complain. Then I will go to rejoicing after I'm complaining, right? My current misfortunes at that time was getting the best of me, that I was confused. So in that moment, I had to, at some point, build a bridge between confusion and clarity, right? Because things just wasn't looking the way that I wanted them to look after undergrad. It was causing me so much stress, right? It was so much pressure because I couldn't figure out life, basically. Let me just say that. I couldn't figure out life. However, right, what I can firmly say, y'all, is that I never quit. I never gave in. I never threw in the towel. I never tapped out. I kept fighting. I was applying for job after job after job, attending every single job fair I could possibly attend, right? I was maintaining and growing my relationship with God. I was serving in church. I was filling my eye gate with images of where I wanted to be, and that goes with the vision boards, right? I had to keep something in my eye gate to keep me positive, right? So I was filling my eye gate with images of where I wanted to go and who I wanted to become. I was filling my mind and my ear gate with words, like listening to spiritual messages and motivational speeches and all sorts of value. Like I was finding books to read because I needed something to transform my mindset, to transform my will, to transform my emotions, because I was like, I know I did not just spend all this money, not money that I had because I had student loans, scholarships, grants. I had all of it to pay for college, right? But I was like, I know I did not waste all of this time and all of this money. I know I didn't get this far to be poor, right? I knew I wasn't broke because my mindset was still in a healthy place, even though it was wavering, but I was poor because I didn't have resources to be able to take care of myself, to make ends meet, from housing to transportation to employment to travel to all the things, right? But God made sure that I had the essentials. And what I learned in that moment, in that process, is that, listen, God is faithful. He is faithful under all circumstances, under all life situations, circumstances, and interruptions. God is so faithful. It's just a matter of you fixing your focus, right? Like your focus needs more focus oftentimes, simply because you need to reposition yourself to continuously go in the direction that you want your life to. As a man think of in his heart, so is he. But in order for something to get into your heart, it has to get into your mind. It has to get into your ears. It has to get into your eyes so that it can soak down into your heart, where you have the faith enough to be able to believe it. And once you believe it, you start speaking it. So even in my dry place, right, my place where it looks like it was famine, I was still every day with the clothes that I had, I would get up and put on my best every time that I had to go out. Because why? I always got to dress how I want to be addressed. Okay, I don't want to look how I feel. And sometimes we get so comfortable with looking how you feel. Like if you look sad, if you are sad on the inside, you dress sad. If you are angry and bitter and full of unforgiveness, if you are feeling like, you know what, I'm living in a land where there's not enough, you tend to look like that. But when you look the opposite, you feel the opposite. So I will put on earrings and sunshades and makeup and my best clothes that I had at that time, perfume and all the things, so that I can feel like I wasn't in that place. And I kept pulling myself out of a place that was so unfruitful until I got to my place of where there was a lot of fruit, right? So fast forward, right? I landed this job at a temp agency, right? And just taking all the legal assignments. So I was one of those temp employees that was like, look, if you got long-term, short-term, or same-day assignments, like send me on every last assignment. I remember one time I was laying down in the house that I was staying in, and I think someone from the temp agency, my account manager or whoever, she called me at like 10, 11. She was like, hey, are you available? Heck yeah. Give me about 30 minutes to an hour to get myself ready and get there. I will be there. Like, I accepted every last legal, and I continue to say legal assignment available. And then I saved every last one of my paychecks. Every last one of them, until I saved about like $4,000, right? So when I reached my goal, I started apartment hunting, right? Once I saw $4,000 in my account, I was like, okay, it's time to get my own. It's time to get busy, right? I needed to turn up my momentum. I needed to turn up the speed, the velocity in which I was seeking a new life, a new beginning, right? And as I turned up my momentum, as I turned up my grit, as I turned up my perseverance, as I turned up my grind, I began to attract certain things, right? So I remember I was leaving one assignment, and my account manager at that time, she called me and she was like, hey, I have this other assignment for you. Can you be there tomorrow? Absolutely. I will be there tomorrow. I showed up that day 2 weeks later. I think it was like 2 weeks to a month later. I ended up landing my first full-time position following undergrad. And this was almost 2 years after undergrad? Almost 2 years after undergrad. It took me that long. I needed to stand on business for 2 years. 2 years not having enough. not being able to make ends meet, not knowing what life was going to look like, experiencing a complete life interruption, and it was considered my type of bad. Someone who was probably not in my situation probably could look at my situation and be like, oh, that's not that bad. And typically, you know what, if I'm real, and y'all know I'm always honest, so I'm gonna be real, it be people in your life that look at your situation and be like, that's not that bad. Like, what you going through is not that bad. How you gonna tell me what's not that bad for me? You're not in my situation, right? They could have been tested at that level, but when they get into their situation, they not gonna look for people to tell them, oh, that's not that bad. Sometimes, no, all the time, you need to keep people out your business. Many people did not know what I was going through, what my situation looked like, and why I was in my situation. But I stood on business. And I was like, by any means necessary, this life interruption will not defeat me. It will not devastate me. I may be disappointed, but I am not devastated. And I'm so glad I was in a place where I was growing my faith, right? Growing closer to God, having a more spiritual connection, and connecting with a church, a family that really loved me, right? And having pastors that really loved me, that poured into me, that made me feel like a spiritual giant, right? Like, I felt great because I knew that at that time, you know, I was doing what I was taught, right? I was replicating, I was illustrating, demonstrating the word that I believe, right? So when I reached my goal, I started apartment hunting, right? So I get the apartment and life is good. I'm like, bruh, I got my own space. I was just so ecstatic at that time, and I could just feel, you know, at this moment, even though I'm in a way better state, I could just feel how I felt all over again at that time, right? And so everything was good. It was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't, you know, luxurious, but it was sweet enough at that time so that I can breathe, so that I can relax, so that I can reset, so that I can rest, right? I had a flow. Like, I started to feel the flow after I saved up the $4,000, after I landed my first full-time position following undergrad, and now I got an apartment. So I'm gaining momentum, right? I got motion, right? So I feel the progress. I see the progress. There's evidence that the work that I'm putting in, oh yeah, we getting somewhere, right? And so here's where the life interruption came in. It was on a Friday night, y'all. I was in intercessory prayer. And I mean, I went in prayer. I mean, all the things, tongues, crying, all the things. I'll never forget, I went in prayer, right? And so following prayer, we had a leadership meeting. So while I was in the leadership meeting, I was getting this feeling that something just wasn't right. And so my first thought, which I believe it was Holy Spirit, my first thought was, you're getting robbed. So I tried to shake the thought, because I'm like, how? Not me. Like, nah, I got motion. Like, things is going good in my life. You know, I'm a good person. I serve in church. I don't bother anyone. All the things. And typically when life interruptions come in, when life circumstances and situations intervene, we like, how? I know not me, because I'm this and I'm that. I do this and I do that. How could this happen to me, right? So I was thinking all the things. And then the thought that I was getting robbed, it started to come stronger, right? And so I started thinking about getting up, leaving church. But then I was like, girl, sit down, because you don't have a car, right? I was riding with my friend at that time. And so I just sat there, just real attentive to the meeting, but still thinking or having this thought that my apartment was getting robbed. And then I was like, you know, maybe it's the devil trying to play on my mind, since I just had such a good time in prayer, right? Because the devil will do that. He will sneak in after you have a remarkable time, after you make remarkable decisions to say, you know what, I'm going to turn my life around. This is what I'm going to do. You set these goals and you've been real consistent, right? You like, I'm going to do things God's way, and he will invade your thought life where there is a battlefield of the mind, right? And so I'm just sitting there and I'm still trying to shake the thought. So then the meeting ends, and while I'm on my way home, y'all, I lied to y'all not. I felt such a peace come over me, knowing that even though I had got robbed, because I knew what I was getting ready to walk into, that even though my apartment got burglarized, I was going to be just fine. So I pull up. I remember we pulled up to my apartment. I didn't even put the key in the door because I knew that my apartment had got burglarized. So when I walked in, my TV's gone, my purse is gone, my electronics gone, and y'all, I lied to you not. Just a couple days before the burglary, I went grocery shopping, and all my groceries they stole except for a bag of broccoli. My bed was overturned, like they was looking under my bed to see if I had money or something. I mean, this was a complete violation, right? Everyone around me at that time, they was in shock. Everybody, they was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But I wasn't, because I had already knew. It was like God had prepared me for that in prayer, right? So that I'm not freaking out, and sometimes God's interventions, his interventions, it may not always happen like that. Like, he may not always tell you or give you a signal that something is happening. It may not always happen. But if it doesn't happen, you still need to reside in the peace of the fact and knowing that God is going to take care of you. Like, if he take care of the birds, if he takes care of the trees, if he takes care of the land by sending rain, by having people who are very, very and highly interested in Mother Earth, right? If he takes care of all the things outside, how much more will he not take care of you? And just like the saying goes, if he did it before, what the heck do you think he wouldn't do it again? So I'm at such peace, right? And everybody's asking me, you okay? How you feel? What you want to do? All the things, right? And so I was just like, you know what? Like, my thoughts couldn't deliver the words to my mouth to speak. And so the only thing that I could say is the devourer is rebuked for my sake, and the fruit of my ground will not be destroyed. And I kept saying that, right? But here's the other caveat. Here's the other interruption that happened in an interruption. So while I was outside waiting for the police, I see one of the dudes that burglarized my apartment, right? He was carrying my sister's duffel bag. She had this Adidas duffel bag that was red, white, and blue. So I noticed the bag, right? So I called him over, and I was like, hey, come in, right? So he comes over there. Now that I think about it, if I had just robbed somebody's spot, like, one, I wouldn't still be in the area. And then two, if they called me over, bro, I am not coming. I'm not coming over there. But he came over, right? After I called him over. And I told him, I said, hey, that's my bag. And he looked at me. He was real shook, right? He was real scared. And he didn't say anything. I don't remember him saying anything. And so as I'm looking at him, he's looking around and then looking back at me. And I'm like, bro, that's my bag. And then he doesn't want to give it up, of course, or whatever the case may be. So I told him, I said, you can have it, but stop stealing, right? And then I let him go before the police got there. And I remember my friend, she asked me, she was like, bro, like, why would you do that? And I'm like, because it's not worth it, right? If he had the heart enough to come into my apartment, and perhaps he was influenced. Maybe he wasn't the ringleader, right? Perhaps he was in need. And it's so crazy that I'm looking at someone who has committed a violation against me, and I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about their lack. I'm thinking about their positioning. I'm thinking about their life circumstances, right? And to me, now that I reflect backwards, I'm like, that was an act of kindness. I was being gentle. I was extending grace, right? And so, long story short, I ended up receiving all that I lost. I didn't go begging nobody, asking nobody. I was just like, you know what? First thought is, God, I know you're going to take care of me. I know you're going to give me back all that I worked for, because I did not work this hard to get here for nothing. And I know you are my Father, and you are going to take care of me. And even if my natural parents can't do it, I know you're going to do it. And number two, the second reason why I feel like I wasn't tripping is because I knew that I had it in me. I had the grit, I had the grind, I had the tenacity to do it all over again. And just because this happened, my life does not stop. And so I shared that story to say, you can disrupt the interruption. Do you understand that when your life is interrupted and you start to act and think and speak negatively, you're attracting those things to you? So if you don't want to attract negativity, you need to do the opposite. So if you were standing on business the first time, doing what you needed to do to see the progress, to get the momentum, to be in motion, you need to do it all over again. And sometimes if you have to make a different decision to get in a different position, you need to do it quietly. You don't need to go complaining to everybody that this happened, that happened, to get the empathy, to get the sympathy. And I know it's a natural reaction for us to want to complain and get comfortable and stop and forfeit and quit and do all the things when life interruptions come. But sometimes you just need to shut up. You need to be quiet, because I guarantee you will get on your own nerves. If you looked on the outside of you, you're complaining, you're murmuring, and all the things will get on your own nerves. Because you're completely talking about what you don't have. You're already looking. And then you're talking about what happened. What's the sense to keep talking about what has happened over and over and over? It already happened. So in my situation, even though I knew I had got burglarized, the next day, I'm not talking about it. If my mother went and shared it with somebody, if my cousin went and shared it with somebody, I don't need to talk about it because it's my business. After it happens, I feel how I feel because of the impact, and baby, after that, I'm moving forward. Sometimes you need to reposition and make a decision to position yourself in a different direction, get in alignment for where you're still wanting to go. Understand this. If you're driving on the road and an accident happens, a police or the fire department comes and they shut down the road. And just because you have to take a detour, does that change the destination? Answer that question. It does not change the destination. You just take a different route from getting there. So when life situations, life circumstances, life interruptions come, it's just a detour. But you keep your eyes, your vision, your goals, your actions, your words, your mindset, your will set on the fact that I'm going to get to my destination. You need to understand that you can change the narrative of life's interruptions. Just because that happened in my life, it doesn't mean that it happened to me. It happened for me. And understand this. My mentor tells me this all the time. Both of my mentors, they tell me this all the time. Tashana, you never fail. You simply regroup. So when life situations and circumstances, when life interrupt, how you disrupt a life interruption is you be quiet. You be quiet. You make a decision to change positions and you move forward from there. It's no sense in stopping. You've already made this progress. So why are you going to forfeit the progress that you've already made, the evidence that you've already seen of you knowing what you're capable of? You're going to forfeit that because this happened. Now, I'm not saying don't feel. I'm not saying don't be angry, don't be emotional, and this, that, and the third. But put yourself on a time limit. Put a timer on your phone and say, this is how long I am going to grieve over this situation. But as soon as this timer goes off, it's time to get to work. We're not focused on what has already happened. We're going to disrupt what is currently going on so that I can move forward. And do you know how confused that makes your enemy? Do you know how confused that makes the people that's around you? Especially because it's common for us to wallow in our sorrows. Do you understand how common it is for us to wallow in our interruptions? Listen, let me tell you something. Anytime you have a life interruption, understand that it's happening for you, not against you. It's happening for you, not to you. Understand that, right? And how you react to life's inevitable circumstances, it oftentimes exposes the idols that's in your heart. And idols of the heart are things that you love, you value, and you consider more important than God, even if it's good and legitimate. Even if it's a good and legitimate thing. Even if it's for the good, if it's an idol in your heart, God is going to intervene. He's going to have an intervention with you because he's supposed to be number one in your life. Again, if you want to believe God, stand on business. Do things his way. And we need to learn how to be obedient, right? Simply because, look, one of my other favorite books of the Bible is Psalms. In Psalms 139, it tells us how our days are in God's hands. All of our days were written in the book of God's plan for our lives before we even lived a single day of life. God watched you be formed in your mother's womb. He watched your entire being being formed in your mother's womb. He planned, God, I'm getting so emotional. He planned your life before you were even born. He knows the end from the beginning. So why are you tripping? When you just need to stand on business, stand on the promises of God, knowing that what he said he's going to do. He is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he should repent. He is not your mother or your father or your teacher or your advisor or your best friend or your boo thing or your spouse or anybody else in your life that has told you that they were going to do something and they ain't doing it. Understand me. God works on his timing according to the plan that he has already had for our lives in the book of life. He don't work on our timing. It doesn't go like that. And it's strategic. And you got to understand that. Sometimes you win, but sometimes you going to learn. You never fail. Sometimes you win, but sometimes you learn. But if you always do what you always did, you're going to always get what you always got. You got to learn how to disrupt the interruptions, disrupt the noise, disrupt the negativity, disrupt the odds, disrupt the interferences, the interruptions of your life. You got to keep being great by any means necessary. And remember, you get rich and you be happy trying. And y'all don't forget to join the rich community. Subscribe, like, comment, share, and save this one for later. And until next time, y'all be great.